Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to yet another webinar in the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series. We have a super exciting topic today and obviously a super exciting partner as well. Today, we're going to be partnering with Nutanix and we are bringing you a cool webinar on cloud migration. I'm sure that's something on everybody's mind. My name is Rubal Walia. I'll be your moderator for this webinar, but what that means is I'll mostly be behind the stage. And in case you have any issues accessing the webinar, please feel free to chat in your issues and queries in the Q&A panel, and I'll try and answer them over the chat. If there are questions for the webinar regarding a technology, please feel free to keep them keying in as well. If there's something we can answer right away, we'll do that on the chat. If there's something that's relevant to the entire audience, we have a formal Q&A session in the end, and I will take those up there. The webinar is getting recorded and you'll receive a copy of the video in the next 24 to 48 hours. And there's also a promo we are running, more about that in a bit. Next slide, please. I want to spend a quick minute telling you about Citrix Ready. At Citrix Ready, we've made sure that the Nutanix technology has undergone robust testing by us. So whatever technology you'll see during this webinar, rest assured, this will work with your Citrix software stack. This is compatible with our technology. All the information about Nutanix and some of the other partners' technologies we've verified is available on Citrix Ready Marketplace, and the URL is given in the slide below. Next slide, please. Real quick, we are running a promo for this webinar. So every 10th attendee on this webinar will be eligible to get an Amazon Echo Dot device. Due to logistics reasons, we can only ship the device within US and Canada for now. So apologies for that, but do stay back till the end of the webinar and I'll tell you how to claim your gift. Wish you the best. Please do enjoy the webinar and handing it over to Selma for now. Selma, over to you.
Thank you, Rubal. Hi, everyone. I'm Selma Wei, Principal Solutions Architect from Citrix Global Technology Partners team. I'm very excited to be here with our technical experts from both Citrix and Nutanix. And before we get started, I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves. Keith, going to start with you.
Thank you, Selma. So welcome, everybody. My name is Kees Baggerman. I'm the Senior Director for End User Computing within Nutanix, and I lead a team of architects, a worldwide group of architects that basically have three responsibilities. One is evangelizing in the broadest scope of the word. So that means that we'll do events like this, but we also write reference architectures, best practice guides, solution notes. And as you can see in our reference architectures, we do a lot of benchmarking. All of our RAs come with login VSI benchmarking, and we run this benchmarking 24/7 in different configurations. So we also do a lot of performance and functional related testing. So that's where our second part comes in, where we do a lot of engineering work on R&D, roadmap, and kind of future vision as well. And the third pillar is when there's a large or strategic or complex deal, we'll help with the customer and the partner to define strategy and making sure that we get on that dot on the horizon. And I'm joined today with Hans.
Hi, thank you, Keith. Yeah, hello. So I'm a partner solution architect for EMEA with the Citrix, and so we're working with our Citrix channel throughout EMEA and with our alliance partners such as Nutanix as in the pre-sale role. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you both. Citrix DaaS delivers a high-performing workspace experience in minutes without compromising security. And Nutanix provides seamless portability, scalability, and disaster recovery functions across different environments. Both companies also have security solutions for your end user computing. There are so many benefits and values from Citrix and Nutanix partnership. We could talk about this all day, depending on how deep we want to go into. But today, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to focus on how our joint solution helps our customers and partners to make a smooth transition of their desktops and applications from on-prem to cloud. As we know, a successful project starts with a good design and planning. So Hans, I'm going to start with you. Could you summarize for us from DaaS on Nutanix perspective What are the design considerations for the purpose of a smooth cloud transition?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, Salma, when designing a hybrid cloud solution, we at Citrix strongly recommend to use the Citrix DaaS service out of Citrix Cloud instead of building or using a classic, CVAD infrastructure on-prem. With Citrix DaaS, you have one management entity to orchestrate your on-prem and your cloud world. It makes it easier, faster, and it reduces risk. When you want to add or move from, add a cloud environment to an existing on-prem environment, or using cloud in a DR scenario. And in my experience in the pre-sale role as an architect, over a lot of projects the last couple of years, I noticed that customer organizations that want to extend out to the cloud, but continue to operate their existing environment on-prem with their existing CVAD management plane and another management plane for the cloud environment, they get stuck in the migration quite soon. So, and also it's important to have the possibility to move workload back on-prem and forth as the needs and requirements changes. Now, speaking about workload, the Citrix VGA themselves, the VMs, the Golden Master in case of Citrix provision like machine creation service, all need to be existing on-prem and in the cloud. And this is among many other functionalities. So where the combination of Citrix and Nutanix makes it easier, to build, manage, and scale from on-prem out to the cloud. So, Keith, how does you look from Nutanix side on this point of view?
That's an excellent question. So what we've seen so far is that there's a lot of interest in that specific function in BCDR, where we're able to use Nutanix native tooling and solutions within our product to actually replicate either the golden image to a remote cluster, or maybe the full set if you're using persistent desktops from one cluster to another. Now, as the topic of today is moving into public cloud, we've got a solution which we'll demo in a few minutes, where we're going to show you how easy it is to move your on-prem golden image or maybe full set of VMs into public cloud. And we do that by using a tool called NC2, Nutanix clusters, and it runs on bare metal instances in public cloud. And one of the major benefits that we see with NC2 is something that we call elastic DR, where you have a small subset of your environment ready in public cloud. And when there's a DR event, or maybe an HA event, or maybe an unscheduled event, that's when you actually start moving over the workloads from your on-prem environment into public cloud, and we'll automatically extend the environment in public cloud with more nodes to actually be able to handle the workload that is coming from an on-prem environment. So with that, we're actually cost efficient in the way that we've got a small subset at first, and when there's a problem or when there's an event where you need to leverage that flexibility of public cloud, we can actually easily scale up with the workload that is increasing. Now, the biggest benefit is yet to come, because we can also scale down, right? So public cloud is known to be easy to scale up, but it's also a scale down mechanism. So I think that's something, especially in the combination with Citrix and Nutanix, that is helping our customers in a better suited, or a more cost efficient way of doing DR.
That's great. Yeah, and now we have the design and planning considerations from Keith and Hans. Let's talk about how to implement the transition. When we say Citrix DaaS on Nutanix platform makes cloud transition seamless, like you two talked about, our customers, partners might ask, say, can you show us? So Keith and Hans, can you please show our audience?
Show you guys, that's for sure. So before we get going with that, I'm just gonna show, for your reference after the call, you can, wind back the recording. So this is like our demo setup for today, where we're gonna show how we start. When users log on, they're gonna be redirected to our resource location on-prem, which you see on the lower right-hand side, with our cloud connectors and machines and AAD stuff. We have Citrix Cloud as an orchestration layer on the top. And what we're gonna do first, we're gonna start building the resource location in AWS. So, But then end of the day, we're going to show you guys a burst scenario where users start logging in and they're going to be redirected to their home zone on-prem. And once that is fully utilized, we're going to switch over and redirect the next users to our environment in AWS. So let's take a look at how this looks like. So I'm going to kick off the first demonstration. So here we go.
In this video, we're demonstrating the resource locations within Citrix DaaS. You'll find that we have two Cloud Connector VMs running on an on-prem cluster. So as you can see, the CC1 and CC2 are our Cloud Connectors that are running on a cluster that is on-prem. In this environment, we've got a machine catalog configured, which we can see within the Web Studio, with about 40 machines in total. And these machines are multi-session OS VMs running on the on-prem cluster, again, as you can see. And we're using these 40 VMs to host publish applications and desktops. And Hans, could you explain the rest of the video to us?
Yeah, so let's go back to Citrix Studio. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the configuration on the hosting, where you define the host connection to the different platforms. And we have one already for the on-prem Nutanix cluster already set up. So we can see that here. And we have a delivery group called corporate desktops. And we added one machine out of those 40 to this delivery group. And it's registered and powered on. So, let's log in and see how this looks like. So we're going to, log in John S onto Citrix Workspace via Citrix Cloud, and we're just going to have one icon to click on for the user, nothing to choose there, cloud or on-prem. So we're just going to kick off a session to our corporate desktop where our home zone are, the Citrix site home zone. And so now we have our multi-session desktop, and if we go into Citrix Director, monitor Citrix Cloud, and we're going to filter on sessions. We're going to see that we have one session up and running on the machine Windows 2022. So that's the naming convention for the machines we have on-prem. So we're going to finish that up and kick off the next part of this configuration. So I'm going to take the next step. It's going to be this one. So
here we can see that this cluster is not running on your typical local appliances, but we've got a cluster deployed in AWS running on Z1D Metal, AWS bare metal offering. The next step will be to register this cluster into Prism Central for an overall view of our clusters. As you can see, the AWS cluster is now added to the on-prem environment, or to the overview with the on-prem environment. What we'll do is set up a replication schedule from the on-prem cluster to the AWS bare metal hosted offering using Nutanix replication technologies. We will replicate the golden image for the multi-user OS setup from an on-prem environment to AWS environment. We'll provide a name, a primary location, and a remote location. Our RPO is 1 hour. And you will see that the master images will be replicated from the on-prem environment. There you go. The two VMs will be replicated to the remote location in AWS. And this is something that comes with our product. It's protection policies, which you can find in Prism Central. Now we've defined 1 hour, but you can be flexible there. So it could be hours, maybe days, maybe weeks, depending on how fast you want to upgrade your VMs. And our UI will provide an overview of the latest status of the replication. And once you're finished, we'll see that in a second. We can actually use that VM and restore the VM on the remote cluster. As we can see right there, we're going to restore this VM that came from the on-prem cluster, is now replicated to the AWS cluster. Restore the VM, and we can actually use that VM to make a new machine catalog. From that point on, we can actually utilize Citrix Studio or Web Studio again. And Hans, can you take it from there?
Yeah, so what we're going to do next is, so we're creating a VM to use a Citrix Cloud Connector. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go into Citrix Cloud and create a resource location for our AWS environment. So we're going to up there now, we're going to create a resource location, give it a name, AWS, and then add a Citrix Cloud Connector to this equation. Now, so what we did now, I was going to pause here. So in the interest of time, we skipped a couple of steps here. So we connected to the console of this machine, which is going to be the first cloud connector, and we skipped, the finishing up of the sysprep, the domain join, and the quite, the straightforward click-through installation of the Citrix Cloud Connector. So that's where we are right now. And so we're gonna, refresh, and we can see here that at this point of time we have a Citrix Cloud Connector installed. It's a yellow warning because we only have one. Best two is best practice, obviously. So the next step would be now to install the Nutanix plugin on the Citrix Cloud Connector machine. So we will need to do that in order to be able to create a host connection for the Nutanix cluster in AWS. Now, we would need to do this on all Citrix Cloud Connector in a given resource location, on-prem or in the cloud in this case. So what we did now is you can see that we have two Citrix Cloud Connectors here. So in the interest of time, again, we skipped the installation of the second Cloud Connector. So now we have two Citrix Cloud Connector up and running in our AWS resource location. Both have the Nutanix plugin installed. So we have Cloud Connectors on-prem and now also in AWS. So now we're going to go back into the Citrix Studio and create a host connection for our Nutanix environment in AWS. So we're going to go to hosting, and again we have one already for on-prem. We're going to add another one for AWS now. So we're going to select our zone AWS. We're going to select the connection type, obviously Nutanix HV, and enter the connectivity IP address for this environment. We're going to enter the credentials for the administrative account to connect to this Nutanix cluster, and we're going to give it a name, and at the end select the provision method, Citrix provision tools, and go to network. If there's more than one, we're going to select that and give it a name, and then we're going to leave scope default and click finish. So here we go. So it's going to. So now we have two Citrix Cloud Connector, two host connections, one for on-prem and one for the cloud. So we're going to go to the next step in this demonstration, and that's going to be back.
Hans, could you please unmute yourself?
So what we're going to do now is we're going to, thank you for that, Keith. So we are going to create the new machine catalog using the new host connection that we created for the AWS environment. Here we go. So we're going to select our AWS zone, click next, select our container, the master image we're going to use. And important here, we need to have the same functionality level of the VGA on-prem and in the cloud for this to work. Same goes for the OS and type, multi-session, single session. We're going to add a couple of machines, add some more RAM, vCPU, and then we're going to select our on-prem Active Directory. We're going to enter a naming schema for our machines account in Active Directory, and doing that, we need to enter a administrative account in Active Directory, which has the right to create machine account in Active Directory. So we can do that here. We can click check names, make sure that this works, then click done. And again, we're going to skip the scope. We don't have web installed, and then we have the summary. And we're going to finish this up entering a name for this machine catalog. We name it AWS so that we know which catalog is where. And now we're going to kick off the creation of this machine catalog, the machines, the VDA themselves, and machine accounts in Active Directory. Now, because we have selected the AWS zone, which is connected to the AWS resource location, which we created previously, this process is now going to run on our Nutanix environment in AWS. We did the same previously for our on-prem environment. So with this, we have one single pane of glass, one orchestration layer in the Citrix part to orchestrate and manage catalogs and machines on-prem and in our cloud resource location. So this is what I meant, you need one entity to get this going. So we're going to click on our machine catalog here and see that we have 5 machines created. And we're going to kick off and start one of them. Start this and going to refresh this page to make sure that we have up and running and registered it. So the next step would be to go to the delivery group and add machines out of this newly created catalog to our existing delivery group. So we're going to choose our new catalog, add one machine out of those 5, and here we go. So we have one delivery group with 2 different machine catalogs. So the next step would be now to add the tags in order to make Autoscale work. So we're going to go back to our catalog that we new created in AWS and click Manage Tags. Select all the machines, Manage Tag, and create new tag. So we're going to name this one Burst AWS. And as soon as you click on Save, we're going to apply this tag to all the machines in this catalog, in this case, the AWS catalog. So here we go. Now, the next step would be to configure Autoscale. For that, we go to the delivery group. We highlight our delivery group, corporate desktops, and then manage Autoscale. The first thing we're going to do is to enable Autoscale. General enable Autoscale, then go back down to Autoscaling tag machines and enable Autoscale for machine with tags and select our newly created tag and click Save. So this is all we need to do. It's just a couple of steps, and we're now ready to try and test this burst scenario. So we go back to our workspace, and we're going to log in with our first user again, John S. Authenticate against our local Active Directory. Now, we configured all the machines in this demo scenario to indicate utilization of 100% as soon as one user is logged on. So this machine where John S is now logged on is going to indicate a utilization of 100% because we had one user logged on. So when we log on the second user, in this case Lisa S, and she also only going to have one icon, the corporate desktop show. So user don't need to choose on-prem cloud. It's just going to be one icon to click on. And when she start in next session, Autoscale is going to redirect this request to the machine in AWS, and the session she's going to get will be from one of the newly created machines in AWS on our Nutanix environment in AWS. We can see that on the AWS logo down to the right. But of course, we can verify this going back to Citrix Studio in Citrix Cloud. And so we're going to go to monitor the good old director, and I think we're going to refresh, click machine, then session again. And we're going to see that we have now 2 users logged on onto 2 different machines in 2 different zones, on-prem and in AWS, on our Nutanix environment in AWS. So with that, I'm going to give back to Selma.
Thank you, Hans and Keith, for showing us the details of the setup as an example of cloud transition. In closing, I want to encourage our customers, partners to reach out to us to collaborate and take advantage of Citrix and Nutanix partnership. Here are some links to the resources where you can learn more about the partnership and check out Citrix's test drive demo on AWS with Nutanix. Later in Q4, exciting announcements coming. There will be more details around the Microsoft Azure integration. I want to say thank you to our speakers and Citrix Ready for giving us this opportunity. Special thanks to Nutanix team for helping us setting up the environment, and our Citrix domain specialist team in EMEA for the technical validations. And with that, I'm going to hand over back to Rupal to go through Q&A. Here you go, Rupal.
Thank you so much, Selma, and thanks a lot, Hans and Keith. Appreciate you walking our audience through the steps of cloud migration. If you could move to the next step, please. And while we do that, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to key in your questions now. There's a Q&A panel on GoToWebinar, and we can try and take some questions now. As promised, every 10th attendee on this webinar will receive an Amazon Echo Dot. So you don't need to do anything specific for that. Just watch out for an email from Citrix Ready. And as I said earlier, you'll get that email in your box in the next 24 to 48 hours. And once you respond to that email, we'll ship your device to you. All right, I think we can move on to Q&A now. I do have one question coming in. Let me quickly grab that. So what license levels do you need for the on-prem portion of Nutanix, and obviously the license level of DAS to utilize this?
Keith, give that one to you first.
Absolutely. So from a Nutanix perspective, you can start with our starter license, which is obviously limited to a maximum number of nodes in the cluster, which is top of mind 12. Now, if you want to expand above 12 nodes per cluster, then you can move up to a different license. But the starter license by default has all of these technologies built in. You can add on if you want to, so you could actually move and basically pick whatever license fits your needs. But specifically for end user computing, Nutanix introduced a per user license, which is called NCI VDI. And that starter license, that specific license does not have the replication features built in, but the Pro and Ultimate will have additional replication technologies built in, which you can use to replicate the scenario that Hans just elegantly demoed. And I think there was a Citrix DAS licensing question there as well.
So yeah, so for that, so any Citrix DAS service subscription purchase from Citrix would be able to work with any kind of host connection or resource location for that matter, except the Citrix DAS offerings that one could purchase out of the store or from the different cloud providers. They are kind of nailed down to those clouds. But as long as there is a generic, Citrix DAS service subscription purchase from Citrix, we're going to cover all different kind of platform types, and especially Nutanix, of course. So.
And I want to add, if you want to use Nutanix as your infrastructure layer, and Citrix DAS, the edition you want to purchase, will be DAS, the hybrid DAS, advanced, premium, and premium plus.
And that's per user too, so it doesn't restrict you to the number of resource locations or clusters or anything. It's like per user as is since a long time.
All right, thank you. And the next one is the steps that you showed. Is it also possible with Azure, or is it only AWS?
Go ahead, Hans.
No, so I was going to give it on to you, of course.
So as of today, we're GA with AWS, and as Selma kind of alluded to, there's some exciting news in the next foreseeable future about the solution that we bring with Azure. So keep an eye on the socials, on the channels, and you'll find that we'll have something exciting for you in the near future.
Q4.
Pushing.
I did see a hand going up, and then it was turned off. If anybody in the audience would like to ask a question on the mic, please feel free to raise your hand, and I'll permit you to unmute. In the meanwhile, do we need to have Nutanix hypervisor on-prem to use Nutanix AWS cloud hosting connection?
No, you don't. So what we offer, besides the elastic DR that I just alluded to, is something that we call cross-hypervisor DR, which means that you can run any hypervisor that Nutanix supports on-prem and still be able to have that same migration path that Hans just showed us. So our technology stack will take care of kind of refactoring your golden image from a hypervisor on-prem, hypervisor of choice, into your hypervisor into public cloud, which runs on Nutanix AHV. So we've got you covered in that scenario as well. Now, from AHV to AHV doesn't require any refactoring of your golden image. So that means you have somewhat of an assurance of a persistent user experience, as there's no fumbling around with the golden image. Whereas in the cross the cross hypervisor DR, either way, we have to take out the VMware tools or maybe the hypervisor Hyper-V tools and put in our own drivers and our own subset of tools. So that means that we're modifying the image slightly, which doesn't have to be a big impact, but it's something to keep in mind.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. I think Abhishek from the audience has a question. Abhishek, you're unmuted. Go for it.
Thanks, Rubel. Thank you all for this demo. This is really great. And I was looking for a similar scenario to implement the flex model for VDI. And I think you have shown that a glimpse of that, I think, in this demo is what really I'm trying to achieve. So I think one of my question I think you answered is we don't need to necessarily have a hypervisor of Nutanix on-prem to have this flex in the cloud model, right? We can still go with Nutanix cloud in AWS and still integrate with VMware or any type of hypervisor on-prem and flex into the cloud, right?
As long as the hypervisor obviously is running on Nutanix, then you've got that flexibility, absolutely. As our storage services need to be running on the platform to actually do cross hypervisor DR. Now, if you have something that is not Nutanix on-prem and you want to move to Nutanix AWS or Azure hosted, then we've got a separate set of tools that will help you with that. We call that Nutanix Move. Citrix has a tool set to do something similar with the image services that they offer, where you can actually get an image and move that into a public cloud. Hans,
image portability service had equivalent functionality. I think, though, however, what we've seen today with the Nutanix is it's a more flexible and easy and a straightforward way of moving the golden image from on-prem to the cloud. It's something very much different than our image portability service. So
thank you. I look forward to connect with you guys just to also go in details of some of these scenarios and work with you guys. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. A couple of questions for me, whether this webinar is recorded. So yes, it is, and you'll receive a copy in your inbox in the next 24 to 48 hours. All right, there's one more coming in. Is the service only available on bare metal on AWS?
Yeah, obviously, if we're looking at performance in general, then we could either do nested or we could do bare metal. And if we look at nested virtualization, performance is typically suboptimal. So Nutanix offers the AWS offering on bare metal, and soon the Azure offering of Nutanix on bare metal there as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot use native hyperscalers with Citrix, right? Obviously, Citrix is able to provision directly to Azure or AWS or GCP for that matter. That being said, if you want to have that flexibility and that ease of use that you saw in Hans's demo, then Nutanix is kind of your way forward.
Gotcha. Thank you. One more question. Can we deploy Windows Desktop OS on NC2 and use Microsoft 365 E3, E5 entitlements for Office apps and Windows Desktop OS licenses?
I'll say as much as this, that I'm not a Microsoft licensing expert. So if you want advice across your Microsoft licensing, then I'd advise you to talk to either your Microsoft rep or your distri that can help you with Microsoft licensing, as there's a lot of nuance there.
Yeah, too many license models. They have the SPLA model, so it's same here. I would recommend reach out to Microsoft, see what they say. I know that there is possibilities, so I don't know which context of licensing and what's planned from Microsoft one would need to have. So yeah.
Sure. This one's for you, Hans. Does Citrix cloud licenses give us DAS capabilities as well?
So Citrix Cloud is basically our operational platform for all the different software as a service that we deliver. And DAS, previously called Citrix CVAD or Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Service, is one of the services that we offer on our Citrix Cloud. So Citrix Cloud is the framework, and Citrix DaaS is the specific service, formerly called CVAD. So, if you have the entitlement to run Citrix DaaS now, DaaS service, you can do the bridge between on-prem and the cloud.
And I want to add, there are some bundled options. For example, Citrix DaaS Premium does include various other components, for example, workspace environment management service. So like Hans said, Citrix Cloud itself is a platform where on the platform, we have multiple services. Some services are bundled, and some services you would have to order separately. So Citrix DaaS Premium, Premium Plus, each bundle would have some other services included. So you can reach out to your account manager and to discuss more details.
Awesome. And thanks for clarifying that, guys. How does the process differ if you are using PVS?
So what we saw, and I'm gonna give it over to Keith in a second, but it's one of the major issues is when you have two different resource locations is the transportation of the golden image as such, and so using provisioning services is going to require more infrastructure, obviously on-prem and on the Nutanix platform in AWS in this case. But I guess from Keith, from your image management side, it's going to be the same, right?
So you can do it in multiple ways. If you're using plain old Windows VMs where you host your V8DX, then it's the typical replication technologies that you would see with any Citrix implementation. But if you would use Nutanix files, which is an SMB share that is hosted on your cluster, we can actually serve your V8DX from that SMB share and use, again, Nutanix replication technologies on the back end to replicate your PVS image into your public cloud hosted cluster. Again, without refactoring your image, you could actually run that PVS image without any issues using Nutanix files as a backend replication methodology. So from a purely a technology perspective, you could use the same tools. It's just like Hans alluded to, it's a little bit more infrastructure, and it might be a little bit more complex due to the networking, complexity that PVS might bring, depending on your setup.
Thank you. Here's the next one. Once the connectors are installed, do you need to connect into Azure or AWS in order to allow to connect and then create machines?
So the cloud connector is this very small piece of software. It's like 19 MB small, which you install in a couple of minutes. And it's going to, once it's installed, you're going to be asked, or during the installation process, you're going to be asked to authenticate as the administrator on to Citrix Cloud, to your Citrix Cloud subscription. And then the Citrix Cloud Connector will initiate a 443 TCP outgoing connection. And from that on, we have the possibility to manage the resource locations from within Citrix Cloud. So I don't know if that answers your question. So we
typically that works out of the box because it's an outgoing transmit versus an incoming one.
And I want to add, so apart from cloud connectors, when you set up your machine catalog in that Azure or AWS, Azure in the future, cloud zone, make sure you do need to add new hosting connections connecting to the zone. In addition, when you have the cloud connector on every single cloud connector in that resource location, you need to install a Nutanix plugin to make sure you don't have like a Nutanix plugin installed on some of the cloud connectors, not others, or their versions don't match. That will cause problem.
So I just want to add one thing which I experienced in numerous of POCs and tests scenarios is that even if you do even if you only do a testing a couple of days, weeks, or even a month, please install at least 2 cloud connectors. Even if you don't need the high availability, because we are updating those cloud connectors on a regular basis. And if there's only one and our update cycle move over to this cloud connector, there's going to be there could be authentication problems, registration problems for the VDA. So even if it's a very small environment, please install 2 cloud connectors.
And there's built-in intelligence in updating the cloud connectors as well, so it won't update both of them at the same time if it's registered to the same resource allocation or resource zone.
Oh yeah, we have an analytic engine that runs over all the customer worldwide, over all the resource location, all the cloud connectors, 100,000 of them. And this analytic machine learning engine figures out what's going to be the optimal time for your first cloud connector and your second cloud connector to be updated. And you have some influence on that too. Even you could actually tune that a little bit. So it's a straightforward process.
Awesome. Thank you. This one's for you, Keys. Does Nutanix Leap work with Citrix DAS?
So Nutanix Leap will work with Citrix DAS. Leap is our way of doing DR, business continuity DR in an on-prem cluster. And it's basically using the same replication technologies as we've demoed in the video. So Leap will work with this as well.
All right, thank you for that. Will Nutanix maintain the firmware updates on the cloud side as well?
So the firmware updates is an interesting one because we're actually leveraging the bare metal instances that AWS is offering. Now, what we'll do is we consider the AWS offering or the Azure offering coming soon as something that also is able to, or also applicable to LCM, Nutanix Lifecycle Manager. And LCM is able to actually go in through your cluster and do an inventory of which software can be updated and which software needs to be updated. What you will find is that the software stack on the Nutanix side will be updated with LCM, but the firmware side on AWS and or Azure is something that we're not able to control because of legal and technical compliance.
Sure, thank you. I think there are a bunch of comments that the audience has loved the presentation and specifically the demos. So good job done, guys. And there are also quite a lot of suggestions in terms of how our audience would like to learn a little bit in more detail how this is done. So I think that gives us some ideas for our next webinar. So we'll definitely take those up and figure that out internally before we, put another webinar on the line. So I think we have, those are all the questions for now. I know we have about 3 minutes left. So I want to give you guys any last words. Hans?
Yeah, I was when I started preparing for this webinar, I got to learn more about Nutanix than I thought. It was a new world that opened up. My idea of Nutanix was quite old, I realized, and I find this this combination of Citrix DAS service and Nutanix. I really love it. I got to love it the last couple of weeks. So thanks, Keith, for the preparation and Stuart. So yeah.
Any last words?
I can only echo the words that Hans just spoke. If we look at the simplicity of the overall stack, I think it's unbeaten. If you look at performance, if you look at flexibility, if you look at what's important for the things that we deliver, which is actually an end user. And we should never forget that everything that we do is around end users. And I think this stack is the absolute best to deliver an optimal user experience from any cloud to any user in any location.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Selma.
Yeah, I want to say the more I know about Nutanix, the more I'm impressed. And I'm more excited about I'm in the partnership team for this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Selma. And thanks a lot, guys, for a wonderful presentation. And I personally loved those demos as well. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for taking the time to sit through our webinar. This is Rubal Walia signing off for now, but see you on our next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.